All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our fantastic webinar on EHVs. We've got a lot of talent today. We've got two amazing panels. We've also got a client video for you, and we really want to make sure that you're able to learn more about EHVs, Emergency Housing Vouchers. A lot of you are landlords, so we really want those tough questions. We want to know exactly what's on your mind. What worries you, what excites you about the opportunity, because there's a lot of opportunity to partner with you all in order to house these families that have these vouchers. So before we get started, I wanted to do a couple of quick housekeeping reminders. Please keep yourself on mute. I think we're all pretty versed in this, but I'm just going to say it to say that I did. We are being recorded. We will send out this recording afterwards. So please keep that in mind. You should have had your little OK button consenting to that. And then as far as questions, please message your questions to Debbie Turner. So when you go into the chat box on Zoom, you should only have two options. So please message Debbie. Debbie will be collating and collecting all of the questions, and then we'll be able to then in turn get those to the panelists live on screen here. So before we get started, I wanted an opportunity to introduce our first panel. So in store for you today, we've got two panels. Our first panel includes representatives from the public housing authorities here locally. So while we get them spotlighted, I wanted to welcome Marie Vu, who's the housing manager for the Orange County Housing Authority. Nate Robbins, who is our senior program specialist at the city of Garden Grove, here on behalf of the Garden Grove Housing Authority. Judson Brown, the housing division manager for the Santa Ana Housing Authority. And Karen Cardwell, who's our housing authority manager for the Anaheim Housing Authority. So grateful for our representatives from the public housing authorities this morning. Before we get into Q&A questions, we are going to have a brief presentation from Nishta Mohendra, who's the Chief Program Officer here at Families Forward, to go over what is an EHV. Let's tackle some of those baseline questions first, and then we'll get into the nitty-gritty working with the public housing authority reps after that. So Nishta, take it away.
Thank you so much, Madeline. Good morning, everyone. Bear with me as I share the screen. Now, you all will have to help me so I make sure that I'm sharing the right screen and you're all able to see what's on there. Thank you so much, Madeline. Good morning again, everyone. My name is Nishta Mohendra, and I'm the Chief Program Officer, and I have the amazing opportunity to work with Families Forward and with the brilliant team and some of the most passionate people we have in our sector. Very briefly, I will go over what do we mean by emergency housing vouchers. So EHV is an acronym that you might have heard being thrown around quite a bit. And so emergency housing vouchers are essentially the public housing vouchers that were issued by the government, the federal government, as per the American Rescue Plan. There were about 70,000 of housing choice vouchers that were issued, and every county, every state got their own allocation. And as we move along in the presentation, we will be capturing what the quantity and the amount that landed in Orange County. For the sake of information, some of the people who qualify for emergency housing vouchers are people experiencing homelessness, who can be at the risk of being homeless, anyone who is fleeing or attempting to flee domestic violence or violence of any kind. And last but not the least, for people who were recently homeless or have a high risk of housing instability. So it's a pretty open-ended definition, and the idea really is for a catch-all for anyone who might be at the risk of being homeless. Like I mentioned, in Orange County, we received a total of 1,035 emergency housing vouchers, and that are being managed and spread out across the 4 public housing authorities that exist in Orange County. We will have on our panel representatives from all the 4 public housing authorities, so you'll have an opportunity to learn a little bit more about them. But to go over really quickly, Orange County Housing Authority received 557 vouchers. Anaheim Housing Authority received 272. Santa Ana Housing Authority received 89 vouchers, and Garden Grove Housing Authority received 117 vouchers. Not all of them are specific to a target or one subpopulation, and they're spread out across the board, which is a really good segue into the next slide. The portions highlighted in green represent the two subpopulations that us as Families Forward are expert at and help provide housing services to. So families, which is adults with children in the household, and then veteran families as well, for anyone who might have a veteran or a military connection. And what you see highlighted in purple is the domestic violence subpopulation, is another population that Families Forward serves very closely. And so these three in particular are the ones that we will be working with, very hands-on. But for the sake of emergency housing vouchers across the county, there are other subpopulations that are being earmarked for it, which include single adults, that's what is referred to as by individuals. The TAY stands for Transitional Age Youth. PSH graduates refers to the Permanent Supportive Housing Program graduates, and then re-entry and exiting facilities is pretty self-explanatory. This slide is to help reflect what the process looks like in terms of from the point that the voucher is issued to the point Families Forward as a housing service provider steps in. So first and foremost, the Public Housing Authority receives all of the referrals for the families through the coordinated entry system. And that is basically an open running list of all the families who are experiencing homelessness in Orange County who are on that list. So it's a very well-coordinated, well-oiled machine in order for the public housing authorities to get connected to those families. Then it is followed by an eligibility check, wherein the Public Housing Authority will review some of the information that they have acquired on the families and determine eligibility. And it's at this stage that a housing service provider like Families Forward comes into the picture, is we help represent and navigate and partner with the families to help verify all of the information that a public housing authority will need on the voucher. And if all goes through really smoothly, really quickly, a voucher is issued, and that process can be pretty seamless and quick depending on a specific case. A voucher is issued, which is comprising of a virtual briefing right now because of the pandemic. Back in the day, before the pandemic, there would be in-person meetings, or the Public Housing Authority would let the family know, this is the voucher you're getting, this is the housing size that you are qualifying for, and then these are the documents that you would need to share with us. The last step to this process is where the supportive services come in and where Families Forward as a housing service provider comes in. And let me take a moment to definitely share, we are not the only ones who do this work. It takes a village, and there are many other community organizations like ourselves who are doing this work really well, really strongly. United Way in particular is a partner organization that works really well with households with vouchers that are attached to them. We also have other partners like Mercy House, Friendship Shelter, or Stand Up for Kids, which specializes in serving the transitional age youth population. What Families Forward does is all things services. We are responsible for attaching ourselves to the family, providing a care model, and then helping them with the housing search, which is a running list of landlord and housing opportunities that they get connected to. We offer security deposit and rental assistance and any other relevant financial assistance that comes with the voucher. We are responsible for the landlord and outreach. And case in point, today's process is a part of that. We want you to know how much we appreciate you and how much we value these partnerships that we have in the landlord community. We offer a progressive engagement model-based case management services, which is to provide wraparound supportive services to the families. Wraparound supportive services include financial planning, mental health counseling, career coaching, and any other need that the family will have while they're getting into the housing unit, and then when they stay in the housing unit. We promise to walk hand in hand with them and with you for at least up to a year. And Families Forward has a track record of really being associated with the landlord community and with the families for way longer than a year. So you get us for the entire journey along the way. You all must be wondering, where do you fit in as landlords? And your role is to really bring the families home. You know, we're almost at the holiday season. You have this amazing opportunity to bring the families home for the holidays. You know, let's rally together. And very tangibly, some of the benefits that you will get by participating in an emergency housing voucher program is you get qualified families as tenants. We help you find them. We help walk hand in hand with them and with you. We will ensure and offer that the vacancy rates are the lowest that you experience by being part of this program. We are going to be offering a $500 sign-on bonus, you know, a little bit of holiday extra funds, never hurt anyone. By the virtue of our supportive services and the intensive case management we will offer, we are hoping to ensure that you have stable long-term tenants, so the turnover rates are low. And even if a turnover happens, we will be with you hand in hand to make sure what are some of the costs that we can offset for you. You know, if there is damage in the property, how can we tag team and partner so that those costs are the least as possible for you? And being a good partner and being heavily involved in this work, we do offer a 24/7 hotline and direct access for any of the landlords who participate in this program. And so you can reach us at any time during the day, during the holidays, on the weekends, in case any issues come up, in case you have any questions. And last but not the least are the vacancy holding fees. Despite all the efforts that we will make as a team and as a partner in this program, you know, we'll keep the turnovers rates low, you will get qualified families. Sometimes it takes time for the lease process to happen. We want to come in and share that cost with you. So we don't want you to bear if you're waiting for 3 weeks for a family to be qualified and for them to get housed. We will step in and help cover some of that cost, if not all of it. And this should hopefully give you a picture of how much that we want to bring to the table to make this a success. And with that, I will end my presentation. Email account that you see on there is housing@families-forward.org. At any point during this webinar or after it, if you have questions, thoughts, or feedback, please don't hesitate to reach us on that email. And we will also post this in our chat group so you have access to it. With that, I'm going to pass this back to you, Madeline.
Thank you, Nishta. Really appreciate that overview. For those of you that are just joining us, we just did an overview and a snapshot of the EHV program. Just a friendly reminder to please keep yourselves on mute. All questions go into the chat box directly to Debbie. Keep those great questions coming. I see a few of them trickling in, so the more the merrier. We are going to be sending out an FAQ afterwards to include any questions that we're not able to answer live. And then I would be remiss if I didn't thank our co-hosts I was going to say this evening, like we're at an event together, this morning, and that's California Apartment Association and Apartment Association of Orange County. So really wanted to thank them. You'll be hearing from them later. They are a second panelist, and including a landlord partner who has direct experience working with vouchers. So as Nishta mentioned, there is a big pie here, and Families Forward is one sliver of that pie. So you'll hear a lot about Families Forward, but at the end of the day, I want to encourage you all to work with vouchers in general. This is not just about Families Forward, but it's about getting these vouchers out in the community and getting these families, individuals, transitional aged youth housed. So while you hear a lot about Families Forward, please keep that in mind. We're all in this together, and we really want to create that awareness for what this process looks like and how it impacts you, the landlords out there in the community. So to kick us off, I'd like to start off with Marie Vu with the Orange County Housing Authority. And I want to ask Marie, how does participation in the EHV program or a voucher program in general, does it complicate the leasing process for the landlord?
Good morning, everyone. This is Marie Vu. I'm the housing manager at Orange County Housing Authority. Madeline, to answer your question, there is no difference between renting out to a Section 8 vouchers or emergency housing vouchers. program, there's the leasing process is the same. There's owner document that we need to have to create an account, but working with Family Forward will help. Actually, emergency housing voucher, working Family Forward will help that process. So I would say that the process probably will be better because now you have the Family Forward in between that help us collect the documents and stuff and work with the client. So the short answer will be it will be easier.
I love that. We love easier. We love less paperwork or paperwork that has help to fill it out. So this next question is for Nate. How much do the tenants pay?
So as with typically all voucher programs, the tenants don't pay more than 30% of their annual income. There is a slight alteration if the payment standard or if the payments that are negotiated for the unit happen to be higher than what the tenant can pay, that there are some adjustments that can be made, but typically 30% of their income is what the tenants pay in rent, and then the rest is paid for by the voucher.
Thanks, Nate. So this is a great segue to Karen. Karen, can you walk us through fair market rent, payment standards? What can these vouchers cover?
Sure. So every housing authority primarily has their own payment standard, and we all have our payment standards on our website. The payment standards are typically the maximum amount of what, sorry, I have an automatic light here. The payment standards are the maximum amount that we will pay as a housing authority, but I do think it's very important to note for landlords out there that it's not the max amount of rent that we will approve. So the rents that we look at are really how do the rents that you're asking for compare to comparable units in your area and in your complex. So if they are reasonable, and the tenant can afford that additional amount that Nate was talking about, if it doesn't go over 40% of their adjusted income, then we can approve that rent, even if it does exceed the payment standard.
That's great. And that's great to know. So as long as the rents are reasonable, you can get it covered, right? And then there's some tweaking in it and working with Families Forward, working with the housing authority to figure out where this family might fall and how the landlord can benefit from that. So let's talk about future, right? One of the things that Nishta covered is that these vouchers are with the family as long as they qualify, right? So what about rent increases? Judson, can they increase rent? Are we stuck on that? How does that work?
Yeah, great question, Madeline. So the program allows the landlord to adjust and increase their rent annually based on the market conditions. Landlords can request a rent increase at the annual anniversary of the family's HAP contract by written notice to us as housing authorities. And when we receive that notice, we conduct, similar to what Karen was saying, we conduct a reasonable rent comparison with unassisted units in the area. And specifically, we're looking at whether or not the rent is reasonable in relation to comparable unassisted units in the area and not in excess of rents charged by the owner for comparable unassisted units on the premises. And then once that reasonable rent comparison is conducted, we verify that the rent is reasonable compared to unassisted units. We're able to approve the rent increase, and they go into effect on the first of the month following the 60-day period after the owner notifies us as housing authorities. So it is allowable. Rent increases are allowable for the program based on market condition.
And Judson, while I have you, because it might be on some of our landlord partners' minds here, we know the city of Santa Ana recently adopted stable rent control. I apologize, can't speak today. How does this impact the vouchers? Does it impact the vouchers?
A great question for Santa Ana landlords. So Section 8 and emergency housing vouchers are exempt from the city's new rent stabilization ordinance. And not only that, Section 8 and emergency housing vouchers are also exempt from the state's rent stabilization ordinance called the Tenant Protection Act of 2019. So not only is Section 8 exempt from our local ordinance in Santa Ana, but it's also exempt from the statewide rent stabilization ordinance.
Thank you for that. So let's talk about timing. Marie, how long does it take from the time that, as a landlord, let's say I agree to rent to this family, we take this voucher, to the time where they can actually move in and I get money in hand?
Good question, Madeline. And this one is not a short answer, but I'm going to try to make it simple. So it depends on a couple factors, right? So when the units are ready to rent, there's a form that the owner complete. They call what is it? RTA is
Request for
request
tenancy
for tenancy
approval.
approval.
I
Yes,
just looked
yes.
it up yesterday. That's the only
Right.
reason.
No, that's helpful. Request for tenancy approval. So that's like a first step, right? So when housing authority receive that, then like Karen and Justin explained, we have to look at the rent. So if with the rent approved, and the unit, sometimes the unit is not ready for inspection, right? You might intend to rent it to the tenant, but the unit might still have occupied. It might not be vacant for us to inspect in 2 weeks or so. So if the rent approved, the unit ready for inspection, we're going to schedule the inspection. And then if for safety, and if the inspection passed, then the tenant probably can move in the next day. Now, when the rent payments start, it depends on the time when the tenant move in and depend on each housing authority, right? So like for Orange County Housing Authority, we cut checks on the 1st and the 15th of the month. So if depending on when you move in, that's when you could get the check the following months. Our experience is sometimes the owner document could be delayed the process. So if you intend to rent it to PHA, we encourage that you can set an account. So usually we ask for like a grand deed and the W-9s and stuff like that. So that can be pre-approved and pre-set up. If that inspection, sometimes we can do a pre-inspection, but keep in mind that pre-inspection only good for 60 days. And it's also a housing choice program, so it's a client choice to select your unit. So we can't just tell the client you have to move here, you have to live here. It's their choice to select which unit. So the short answer is all of the duck, like in the row. It could be quick, and then we can pre-set up. And like I say, working with Family Forward, just want to put that in again. That Family Forward will help you facilitate all of that and help us move faster.
Appreciate that, Marie. From Families Forward side, although we do not do the official inspections, we do offer pre-inspection, we'll call it that, support to kind of walk you through what the housing authority will be looking at, and then if there are any minor deficiencies or things that need to be updated, Families Forward is willing and able to help do that. We need to get a vendor out there to fix the GFI. We're gonna do it with you, because we really want to make these units pass and make your job as easy as possible. So let's talk about what happens if a unit doesn't pass inspection. This question I'm going to give to Karen is what happens if there's a conflict? Is there an appeal process? What happens if the unit doesn't pass?
So it would depend on whether the landlord agrees with the deficiencies that were found in the unit. Typically, if the landlord has a serious disagreement with the deficiencies that were found by the inspector, they can always contact the housing authority. Usually the supervisor over that inspections department can address that issue. It is important to note that most housing authorities do not go by local code. We go by housing quality standards that are embedded in the federal regulations. Depending on what you're talking about, sometimes those can be less than the local code. So if you're concerned that perhaps you have an older building and it doesn't meet what the new local code is, that's not necessarily going to prevent you from passing an inspection with the housing authority, because our standards are based on what we term decent, safe, and sanitary. We want to know that the unit is safe and not necessarily that it's completely up to code. That's a much higher standard typically than what we look for.
Thank you for that, Karen. Please keep these questions coming in. These are fantastic. What bothers you? What are you worried about? How can we ease your mind with these vouchers? So I've got a two-parter, and I'm going to give this one to Nate with Garden Grove. So first part of the question is, do we have to have a 12-month lease?
I may have to defer that one. I represent the housing authority, but I don't know some of the specifics. Can somebody else field that one for me?
How about Marie or Karen? Do we have 12-month leases required?
Typically, we do require a 12-month lease. It's generally based on what the market generally calls for. Typically in Orange County right now, the market does generally call for a 12-month lease. However, some housing authorities may make exceptions for based on circumstances. So it's kind of hard to give a blanket answer to that for all of our housing authorities, but for the most part, that is what we ask for.
So we can work through it together. So the second part of the question, Nate, is does the tenant pay its portion of rent directly to the landlord? Do they pay it to the housing authority? How does rent collection work?
I'm on mute.
Sure.
Yeah, sorry about that. So the tenants would pay their portion, and then the housing authority would pay the remainder, which typically is 70%. So whatever the payment standard is, the tenant would pay their 30, the housing authority would pay their 70, which obviously represents the full month's rent. So
thank you for that. And then I'm going to talk about, realistically, a tenant is a tenant, and you renting to somebody who walks in and fills out an application or turns it in online, or working with a provider and helping a family or an individual with a second chance. We just don't know what's going to happen, but we like to call them here peaceful exits, right? It may not be the right housing opportunity, and we might have to work through finding another housing opportunity that's better suited for that family's needs. So Judson, what can a landlord evict a tenant? Is there anything that would prohibit them from providing their normal customary notices and violation letters and potentially eviction if it ever got to that point?
Yes, a landlord can evict a Section 8 voucher holder. So HCV tenants are bound by the terms of their rental agreements and are subject to evictions, same as non-HCV tenants. When a tenant selects a housing unit, they're expected to comply with the lease and the program requirements, pay their share of rent on time, maintain the unit in good condition, and notify the housing authority of any changes in their income or family composition. The eviction process is undertaken by the landlord and would be conducted same as for any non-Section 8 voucher holder. The owner has to give a copy of their eviction notice to the housing authority at the same time the owner notifies the family, but they are able to evict same as any non-Section 8 voucher holder. And in fact, if a family is evicted from a unit assisted under the program for a serious or repeated violation of the lease, we must terminate assistance for that family as well. So it is allowed by our program, and it's no different from enforcement of the lease agreement for non-Section 8 voucher holders.
Thank you for that. Now I'm going to throw this question out to anyone who wants to answer it, and I think that might be different per housing authority. But the housing authorities have staff that work to support the landlord. They're the ones who are collecting the documentation. When a landlord has to submit a notice and needs to send a copy, they've got a point of contact. And I'm assuming, are they called case managers across the board for everybody? The staff that are on site with you that work, are they called housing specialists? What's the common title?
Housing specialist.
Housing specialist. So the landlord has a housing specialist point of contact within the housing authority. So let's talk about communication and how that works. So if there's a rent increase, the landlord needs to submit that information to the housing specialist. How is that processed, and what can landlords do if there are delays in that process, right? Because a landlord has to submit, or for example, a tenant has a decrease in income and they need to submit that change in their income as well. What does that communication process look like? How long does it take to make changes? And what can landlords do to help move that process forward? And I'm going to throw it out there. Whoever wants it, or else I'm going to eeny, meeny, miny, moe.
So for Anaheim, our rent increase process actually, they can send it to the housing specialist. However, we have special email or in our landlord portal, which we highly recommend for our landlords to sign up through our online portal, because they can get access to all of their upcoming inspections, whether they've passed or failed. They can look at all of their payment history. But one of the really nice things they can do is submit all their rent increase requests through that landlord portal. And that is something that once they submit it, it shows up on our side the next morning. And we start addressing it right away, reviewing what they've submitted, if anything is missing. And we try to get back to them as soon as possible, because that is a pretty fast turnaround time that's necessary in order to provide proper notice to the tenant if their rent actually ends up changing for them. So that's typically what that process looks like. If they don't hear back, then we definitely want them to email us. And like I said, we have a special email address for rent increases and rent increase inquiries. They can also email their housing specialist for their tenant, or they can email directly to the supervisor. So a lot of our landlords know exactly who the supervisor is. We have a pretty close relationship with everybody. So it's not uncommon for that to happen as well.
So that's fantastic. So Anaheim Housing Authority, there is a landlord portal. Do the other housing authorities also have a landlord portal?
Yes, for Orange County Housing Authority, we also have a landlord portal, works similar to what Karen mentions. Also, Madeline, your part of your question, if it's tenant portions, if their income decrease, is the tenant, they can also report it in writing to the housing specialist, and that if the income drop, and then that happens a lot, we could see a lot in 2020 due to a pandemic. The benefit is when the tenant portion decreases, the housing authority will adjust our payment so that the owner would not see the difference, because the tenant's supposed to pay 30% of the income toward the rent, but if their income decrease, the housing authority will adjust it out. We pick up the difference. And usually if the tenant can provide us with the support document and even doing pandemic cuts, have some waiver that we can accept some self-certifies and stuff like that. And so typically that the rent that we can adjust for the tenant is the next month's rent. So the decreases happen pretty fast, and the owner will not experience any different. You're going to receive the full amount of rent from both parties, the housing authority and the tenant.
Thank you, Marie. Now, I hate to wrap us up, but we're actually at time. There are quite a few unanswered questions, but do not worry. We will be sending out a FAQ and include all the questions we covered today and then some. So if something pops into your noggin later, just pop it in the chat. We're going to make sure we can get all these questions answered for you. A couple questions that came through that I just want to circle back on is, how long does this assistance last? And so I just want to share with everybody that these vouchers are with the family. They are tenant-based vouchers. As long as that family is in compliance, income qualifies, good standing, they will be able to maintain this voucher forever. I mean, for as long as they're able to. So I did want to just repeat that. This is not going to be a short-term program. So you will be able to work and develop that relationship with the housing authority and working with families forward, getting access to this portal, making sure that you're familiar with the way the program works. So I want to thank our panelists, and I'm going to be cheesy here because we're in Zoom and we can't read our emotions, but we like to do jazz hands. So if everyone can join me in jazz hands and thanking our amazing panelists for their time this morning. I hope that they will stay on with us, because we will be hearing from some landlords later on. And if there's any follow-up, we'd love to kind of pull them in here. But again, thank you to our panelists. We are going to take a quick break by showing you a video of a family right now that is searching for housing that has a voucher. So the audio on the video is a little bit low. So once I stop talking, turn your volume up. When it ends, turn it back down. I'll try to come in very softly so I don't shock you. But please enjoy this video.
Hi, my name is Hannah. I'm one of the housing managers here at Families Forward, and I just want to spend a little bit of time talking to you about the work that we do with our families here, and how we prepare them to be really amazing tenants after they leave our program. Irene is a single mom with 3 children that was referred to us from a partner agency. She was living in a transitional shelter And we were working with our rapid rehousing program to help the family locate permanent housing, which we were able to do successfully because the mom is employed, a hard worker, has always prioritized employment and housing for her kids. In that time, we've been working with her to increase her employment skills, to ensure long-term employment so that she's always able to make that rent payment on time. And we've really just seen the family flourish during their time with us, and we're excited to see them go off into a landlord partnership with this new housing opportunity.
So I just received my Section 8 voucher, and we're really excited. It's a new start for my kids and I. We're going to be in a new area. It's a fresh start, and I'm going to be closer to my sister, so that's always a plus. Hannah's helped me a lot. Like, she's helping me right now with getting a housing specialist. When we needed counseling, she's helping us with counseling. The biggest thing is just learning and making sure that like my rent gets paid first, like prioritizing what my expenses go towards, so that way my kids and I are never put in a position where we're going to be homeless. Because I mean, I was homeless before I went to a shelter, so we don't want to be there again.
All right, I'm going to come in softly. Let's get our audio back up. Hope you enjoyed that video. You know, the family is actively searching for housing. That's one of many families that are searching for housing, but didn't really put a face to the name because, you know, at the end of the day, they're voucher holders, but they're people, they're families, there's children. And, you know, again, we all want to work together to house these families and individuals and transitionally, all of them. Let's get all these vouchers into our system. So for our next panelist, we're so grateful to have the landlords, the representatives on behalf of the landlords and landlords themselves joining us. So I'd like to say welcome to Victor Cao, who's the Senior VP of Local Public Affairs for the California Apartment Association. And then we've got David Cordero, who's the Executive Director of the Apartment Association of Orange County. And Danielle Alders is joining us. She is the Vice President of Residential Services with Avalon Bay. So I would like to start by allowing each of you to do a quick intro on the organization that you're here with, a little bit more about the portfolio or who might be in your industry. And again, thank you to our co-sponsors who are on the call here today for helping us to put this webinar forward. So let's start with Victor.
Good afternoon. My name is Victor Cao. I'm the Senior Vice President for the California Apartment Association. We represent over 14,000 member companies who employ over 70,000 real estate professionals in the industry. And in turn, that represents about 2 million market rate and affordable housing units throughout the state. We're very happy to be here today and look forward to our discussion.
Thank you, Victor. David?
Good morning, everyone. David Cordero. I'm the Executive Director with the Apartment Association of Orange County. The Apartment Association of Orange County has been serving rental housing providers here in Orange County since 1961. So we're celebrating our 60th anniversary this year. Our goal, has been to always advocate for the rental housing industry, but also to advocate for solutions to so many of the challenges that we face here in Orange County, as well as in Riverside County that we also represent, where we have public policy issues that need to be addressed in a meaningful, thoughtful way. Homelessness obviously is one, rapid rehousing, dealing with issues of domestic abuse and needing to get out of dangerous situations and helping families receive the shelter that they desperately need. These are the types of things that AAOC has been very pleased to get behind. And as these issues become more at the forefront of public policy discussions, we're glad to be there to stand with our partners in the housing industry and in the supportive industries that provide housing to ensure that we're able to meet those needs and advocate with our members to the best of our ability to encourage them to give these types of programs a chance if it's something that they're unfamiliar with or maybe even a little hesitant with. So it's good to be with all of you today, and I'm going to be happy to answer as many questions as come my way.
Thank you. And Danielle, will you round us off?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Maddie. Yeah, so I'm the Vice President of Operations at Avalon Bay Communities. We are a real estate investment trust, and on a national basis, we have roughly around 80,000 apartment homes. Here in Orange County, it's about 3,500 apartments. I've worked for Avalon Bay for the past 23 years. And over the years, we've worked with many of the housing authorities that were on the panel earlier. In 2009, we started a relationship with Families Forward through their rapid rehousing program. And I think over the years, we have supported and had 40 families, I think, come through our doors. And we've been thrilled with that partnership and that relationship. We sincerely believe in the work that Families Forward does, as an advocate to help stabilize families in need in Orange County, and it's a great need. So the partnership's really been amazing. As far as vouchers go, we have currently 60 families and or residents on a voucher here at Avalon Bay in those 3,500 apartments that I mentioned. And we've been working with the housing authorities for many years. It's a great addition for occupancy. The comments made earlier from each of the housing groups, it really does feel like any other resident once that resident moves in. And I really, the combination of everything that Families Forward can do for an individual and a family, with the voucher itself is really a really strong resident, just based on our history with Families Forward and the additional resources that Families Forward can provide these residents. So we're able to treat a voucher recipient just as a non-voucher recipient. That's really sort of how we look at it. One of our core values is the spirit of caring. And so voucher program, our work with Families Forward really helps us to deliver on that. So again, happy to be here and answer any questions y'all can shed my way.
Thank you, Danielle. Just as a friendly reminder, please send your questions in the chat box for our landlord panel here. I'd love to start off with Victor. I know David touched on it lightly, but why is it important that both of these big, associations are standing behind and working with the housing authorities to support getting these vouchers out in our community?
A great question, Madeline. As David alluded to, the association does stand to defend its members from egregious regulation. But moreover, we're also here to be a solution to, especially California's housing shortage. We are the industry that is providing an essential service to the community, whether they be someone that we consider market rate or within affordable housing. As I'd mentioned, CEA represents over 2 million market rate and affordable housing units in the state. That being said, the association stands by trying to solve these significant societal issues within our community, working in cooperation with local authorities, as well as the community at large. So we continue to partner with government agencies and different nonprofit organizations to solve some of these societal issues. While we can't take the entire brunt of solving this very big problem in our state, and I would say a problem that is across our country, we can do our one part, one unit at a time. So for many of our members, just like Avalon Bay and many other companies, they're a part of the solution. They're providing, 1 unit, 50 units, 100 units, 3,000 units. That is being a part of the solution. And so we're very happy to be working with reputable, incredible organizations like Families Forward, who have a track record of success with their clients.
Thanks, Victor. And you mentioned housing shortage. So I'm gonna pop this question over to David. Can you talk a little bit more about what's going on in our community and this housing shortage and the vacancy market out there? Oh, David, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Great question. The housing shortage is obviously something we've been dealing with for some time. And unfortunately, it's something I think we're going to be dealing with for the foreseeable future until such time as government gets out of the way of the production of new housing and facilitates solutions that are going to ensure equitability in regard to those that are investing and developing, as well as finding solutions to dealing with things on the end user side, the renters side. Housing is perhaps the most or one of the most complicated issues that local governments and state government and federal government even have to deal with. It really comes down to for here in Orange County, we'll look at it here. It's a supply shortage, and there's just not enough new housing being built to keep up with the demand. Whether it's for sale housing or rental housing, there's just simply not enough that's coming onto the marketplace quickly enough. And a lot of that is due to the regulations that are being imposed on those that seek to provide that additional housing supply. For our members, at AAOC, we represent, owners of a single family home rental, a duplex, and then we have members who have hundreds, in some cases, thousands of rental units here in Orange and even Riverside counties. And for a program like this, we're really pushing for folks to, explore and learn more about what Families Forward and the Emergency Housing Voucher program has to do. While we do have a shortage of housing right now and vacancies are extremely low countywide, there are still opportunities as people move out to go and take advantage of new opportunities out of state or in a different county for some of these units to open up. And for our members, what we're trying to push them to consider is, okay, yeah, if you anticipate a vacancy coming up, you're going to have a guaranteed source of income from a voucher holder where on-time rent payments is never going to be in question. And so as we deal with the policy issues dealing with the housing shortage itself, we know that through advocating with our members to participate in this program, we can at least provide one more affordable unit for someone or family that is in desperate need.
Thank you, David. Appreciate that. Danielle, could you share a little bit more about the landlord experience? Have you ever had any issues or challenges collecting your standard security deposit with the rent limits? Talk about that experience.
Sure. Well, as I mentioned, there certainly are a few additional paperwork requirements and process requirements. We mentioned inspections, I think, earlier, notice periods. So there are a few extra, process pieces that you do have to go through. But once you understand what those are and you complete those, again, I go back to it really feels like any other resident, whether they have a voucher or not. With that same token, sometimes residents don't work out and, issues do come up. And again, it was mentioned earlier, we treat these residents with vouchers just like any other resident, and lease violations, rent non-payments, and all of those things, we still go through the same process if necessary, to get to even an eviction. But with the housing authorities are great help as a landlord. They're great help in advising, and the 70% of rent that they are receiving in voucher, is at jeopardy. And so there's a lot of reasons for these residents to be great tenants. So our experience has been just like market rent, non-voucher. Sometimes it does work out and sometimes it doesn't, but we don't feel handicapped in any way to work with these residents. And again, our work with Families Forward has proven the resource you are for these families as well, to give them advice and give them good guidance. And so again, I think the combination of Families Forward with the voucher is a really great tenet. So it's been a great experience for us.
Thank you, Danielle. And I wanted to, small little plug, again, we are one piece of this pie. We're all working together. There are many other service providers, but the housing navigation team at Families Forward, we provide tenant education. And we are focused on a thriving renter that understands the responsibilities of being a good tenant and understands, basics, leasing, simple things like you can't put your trash out on your doorstep because it's going to invite pests. We want to handle that. We want to support that landlord. So just a follow-up question, because I have a few questions coming in here about the inspection process. So a follow-up question for Danielle. If I heard you correctly, once you get the process like understood, it is not rainbows and butterflies. So we're not going to paint a picture that's not accurate. But once you understand it, have you felt like there's been any delay, or have you been dampened by the inspection process? Does that add any complications to your experience working with vouchers?
No, I mean, on the move-in side of things, that can potentially put a little delay on the front side. I think it was mentioned, we have to get the apartment ready for occupancy. And so the timing of the ability to do that and have an inspection, get a move-in, there may be days in there that are additional days. But, once that's complete, resident moves in, it's, same residency as anyone else. I know the question about renewals came up earlier with the earlier panel, and our experience has been that the renewal process is, again, very simple. We submit notices 60 and 90 days in advance for any resident, and that goes along with what the requirements are for the different agencies. And, just in talking with the folks that process the applications and process our voucher programs, it didn't seem that really ever gets denied. So the process of figuring out what a renewal rate is in the market, we get the same rent increase situation for a voucher resident as a non-voucher resident. So
I appreciate that. And I'm going to speak on behalf of the housing authorities, and if I'm wrong, chime in. But I think, especially right now, we're in such a unique time. We have 1,000 vouchers coming into our system. And that means 1,000 inspections, fingers crossed by the holidays, we'll see, but 1,000 inspections. And so really being patient and mindful that the housing authority is also, from a capacity point, how we process that. So that's where we want to support with vacancy fees, with pre-inspection. So there isn't a secondary inspection. That's the role of the service provider. And that's what we want to help provide to the landlords. Victor, in our final question here, I'd love to hear from you. What are you hearing from your constituents? What are the fears and the kind of tough questions that you're getting, and how would you address those?
I think it's different for different demographics of rental housing providers. So, generally it's been positive. Those that have worked with the voucher programs, especially here in Orange County, by comparison, everything is relative, especially those multi-jurisdiction housing providers that might provide housing in, Texas or here, right? By comparison, things like inspections and processing happen a little bit quicker here. But again, that's relative to jurisdiction and jurisdiction. These housing authorities, Orange County, Anaheim, Santa Ana, Garden Grove, they've been established for quite some time, right? That being said, I think there is some sense of, historical stigma around certain public assistance programs. And, what I would communicate to many of our members is that it's a lot different than, programs that were administered in maybe the 1970s, 80s to today. So I think if you take a second look at this, number one, we can get you over the hump, both the associations as well as working with a nonprofit service provider like Families Forward. So getting over those humps has been easier. One of our mutual members with AAOC and CAA is Schroeder Management. They've caught some really good headlines in the OC Register, providing housing, participating in a voucher program, and Ernie Schroeder's had zero issues, right? So it can work to a mutual advantage, both for a client as well as our members. I think definitely paying special attention to the inspection process. Those that have older units, I think, are naturally concerned about whether they have to bring something up to code. But I would say that, you can work through those processes, again, working with the associations or with your service provider. We can get over those humps. There's no challenge that we can't get over. And if anything, we appreciate that you've at least taken some consideration of the program.
Well said. And then David, I'd love to give you just one final last word if you'd like to share anything with your members or others.
Thanks, Madeline. I just kind of want to, take what Victor said in one step from the association perspective. CAA and AAOC, we would not be advocating as strongly for these types of programs if we had concerns that they were not able to work with our members in a manner which is reasonable and timely and expeditious and fair. For us, we want to make sure that our members are going to be well represented in any endeavor that we are advocating for. And this program in particular, I mean, the housing authorities here in Orange County are very responsive. We're working toward the same goal, and the purpose here is to get people the housing that they need. And that if the issues do come up where, inspections, result in something needing to get addressed, they're going to work to get the reinspection taken care of as quickly as possible, because ultimately each day that a family or an individual remains unhoused, it puts them in jeopardy. And we all want to make sure that that everyone who needs a home gets a home. And if you have concerns or questions, reach out to Victor or me. We're both here to provide our experience in working with the housing authorities, working with Families Forward. And likewise, if you have a desire for a conversation with one of our members that is participating, we can get you connected. And, third-party verification is good, but having that chance to talk to somebody who's directly involved in the program, providing housing, there is no substitute for that. And, that's the value that, CAA and AAOC can provide to its members is, those referrals and making sure that questions are addressed and concerns are relieved, and that everyone can move forward comfortably and confidently.
Love it. Well said. Thank you, David. So just a little quick jazz hands for this panel. So appreciative of their time today for both of our panels, for all of you that joined us. Like Victor said, we appreciate that you expressed enough interest to learn more, and that's a good start. And we're here to house people. We're here to house families. Like David said, we're all in this together. And we are going to make mountains move. So I just wanted to thank you all again. We're putting up the contact information for Families Forward. We'll send out a summary of the frequently asked questions, a recording of this video, the contact information. I know we got a couple of requests for that, but I really wanted to thank you all for joining us this morning. I want to be mindful of time. I can't believe it's right at 11 here. I think we get a little pat on the back for that, but thank you all. And thank you to our amazing co-sponsors, the California Apartment Association and Apartment Association of Orange County, for supporting this effort, and all of the landlords out there. Thank you all. And let us know if you have more questions. We're here for you, and hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye, everybody.